Some places in America are soaked in history. Then there are places that are stained by it. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, is one of those places. For 3 days in July of 1863, this quiet farming town became the epicenter of a storm of iron and lead. When the smoke cleared, 50,000 men were dead, wounded, or missing. The fields were churned to mud and blood. Today, it's a peaceful, solemn park. The grass has grown back, and monuments stand silent watch. But the story goes that the battle never really ended. The sheer violence and terror of those 3 days left a wound on the land itself, an echo that refuses to fade. And nowhere on that battlefield is the echo louder or more terrifying than in the jumble of ancient boulders known as Devil's Den. Most paranormal reports at Gettysburg are subtle, a cold spot, a strange feeling of sadness. But sometimes it is anything but subtle. Visitors will be walking the fields on a beautiful, clear autumn afternoon, the only sound the rustling of leaves, and then it will happen. It starts with a pop, distant and faint, like a firecracker. Then another, and another. Soon, the air is filled with the phantom crackle of thousands of rifles. You can hear the whistle of Minié balls flying past your ears. The ground trembles with the roar of cannons that are no longer there. And then you hear the men, the screams of the wounded, the shouted orders of officers whose voices have been silent for over a century and a half. Paranormal investigators and tourists alike have recorded these sounds. What's most terrifying is when you hear the charge. From the woods near Devil's Den, people report hearing it. The high, keening shriek of the rebel yell, rising from hundreds of invisible throats, a wave of pure, terrifying sound that rushes over you. You can feel the vibration of their running feet in the ground beneath you. You instinctively spin around, your heart pounding, absolutely certain you are about to be overrun. And you see nothing but an empty field, a gentle breeze, and the silent, watching monuments. At the foot of the hill called Little Round Top, just across from Devil's Den, lies a flat, strangely barren patch of ground known as the Triangular Field. During the battle, it was a slaughter pen, a deadly no-man's con. Land raked by constant fire from the Confederate sharpshooters hidden in the rocks of the den. Today, it has a different reputation. Ghost hunters and paranormal researchers call it a dead zone. Modern technology simply stops working there. A few years ago, a photographer named Mark went to Gettysburg specifically to capture atmospheric shots of the battlefield at dusk. He'd heard the stories about the Triangular Field and, being a skeptic, wanted to see for himself. He set up his high-end digital camera on a tripod as the sun began to set, casting long shadows from the monuments. The first thing he noticed was the silence. The chirping of crickets, the distant sound of traffic, it all just faded away. It was a thick, unnatural quiet that felt like pressure on his eardrums. He took his first picture. The camera's screen showed a burst of multicolored static and then went black. He turned it on again. The battery, which had been fully charged, was now completely dead. He pulled out his spare. The same thing happened. Annoyed, he took out his smartphone to take a few shots instead. The screen flickered erratically. The compass app spun wildly, unable to find north. And the battery icon drained from 100% to 0 in less than 10 seconds before the phone died. It was then that Mark felt it, the distinct, prickling sensation of being watched. He was completely alone in the field, but he felt surrounded. There was a feeling of profound hostility in the air, a sense of unseen things drawing closer in the growing darkness. He abandoned his gear and walked, almost ran, back to his car. Later, at his hotel, he managed to get his camera working again. Most of the files on the memory card were corrupted, but a few images were recoverable. They were mostly black, but full of digital noise and static. In one of them, however, he saw it. Faintly, mixed in with the noise, were shapes. the unmistakable outlines of several tall, thin men standing in a line. They were standing just behind where his tripod had been, looking directly at the camera. If you climb into Devil's Den itself, the feeling of being surrounded becomes even more intense. The place is a maze of giant diabase boulders, some as big as houses, tumbled together to form a natural fortress. This was the nest of Confederate sharpshooters, picking off Union officers on the hill opposite. The fighting in and around these rocks was brutal and intimate. Today, the place feels claustrophobic, watchful. People who explore the crevices and caves report experiences that are unnervingly personal. It's the sounds that get to you. You'll be sitting on a rock, catching your breath, and you'll hear a voice whisper right in your ear. "Water. I need water." The accent is thick, Texan. You jump up, and there's no one there. You'll hear the distinct, metallic click of a rifle hammer being cocked, so close you flinch, expecting a weapon to be leveled at your head. Again, nothing. The most common report is of hushed, urgent conversations happening just around the next boulder. You can't quite make out the words, but the tone is one of fear and determination. Some people have even had helpful encounters. One story tells of a young woman who was climbing on the slippery rocks when her foot slipped. Just as she started to fall, she heard a clear, commanding voice right behind her say, "Look out behind you." She instinctively twisted and caught herself, avoiding a nasty fall. She turned to thank whoever had warned her, but the rock she was on was isolated. There was nowhere anyone could have been standing that close to her. The rocks, it seems, remember. They hold the echoes of the fear, the pain, and the final words of the men who fought and died among them. Of all the spirits said to walk Devil's Den, one is seen more than any other. He is so frequently encountered that regulars just call him the helpful soldier, or sometimes the barefoot man. The story is almost always the same. A family or a couple will be exploring the area, a bit lost, when they are approached by a man who they assume is a historical reenactor. He looks the part. He wears a tattered gray uniform of a Confederate soldier, but it looks incredibly authentic. It's not a clean costume. It's dirty, frayed, and looks like it's been lived in for a very long time. He is friendly, knowledgeable, and speaks with a soft Southern accent. He'll point out the positions where the sharpshooters hid, and he'll tell them about the battle with a strange, personal intensity, as if he was actually there. People are usually so charmed by his historical knowledge that they don't notice the odd details at first. They don't notice that his uniform is missing its buttons, or that his rifle is an original, not a replica. And most of them don't notice his feet. He is always barefoot, standing on the sharp, broken rocks without any sign of pain or discomfort. The encounter always ends the same way. After talking for a while, he will reach into a leather pouch on his belt. He'll pull something out and offer it to them. He'll say something like, "Here, you'll need this more than I will." One couple reported that he handed them a single, perfectly preserved musket cartridge. It was heavy and real. The man looked down at the strange gift in his hand for just a second. When he looked back up to ask the reenactor what he meant, the man was gone. Not walking away, just gone. They were alone in the jumble of rocks. The air was still. They were left holding a perfect piece of history, an impossible souvenir from a friendly conversation with a man who has been dead for more than 160 years.